Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Ryan Lovett with us, and Ryan is in the architecture, planning, and real estate development world. So Ryan, it's great to have you. If you can just kind of go through a little history of how you got to where you are now, that would be great.
Absolutely. I am the founder, CEO of Lovett, named after myself because I'm proud of what we do. We're a different kind of company, a real estate advisory, real estate strategy, planning and design firm. And we combine these three disciplines in a really unique way to solve really complex problems that are facing the built environment, and often get pulled into projects, opportunities that really need a different way of thinking, and use those different disciplines as levers to uncover something that most folks can't see. Often other times we are literally identifying problems that are out there that no one's solving, and offer up thought leadership, ideas, ways of developing actionable plans to transform places. How I got into this, so I'm a native Californian, a native Angelino. I grew up in Southern California, in Los Angeles specifically. And throughout my career, I've basically been moving up and across the US, and have had the benefit over the last 20 years of practicing either architecture planning or real estate development in many of our great American cities. And I'm very much focused on really large-scale urban development. But my career's taken me in all different places where I've gotten to work on sustainable tourism in the Caribbean, in mountain resort villages here in California and in Lake Tahoe area. And all of it is really in service of really creating places that people love and capturing the value of that and doing it in a way that's very sustainable, and it's really triple bottom line thinking.
It sounds like you're able to kind of decode the NIMBYism that might be happening for a lot of development these days, and trying to get the community behind the idea of great development in their communities.
It's a huge theme in, I think, everything that we face. Challenges of the city, right? And our lack of building housing, or our inability to move things forward and create more opportunity for the next generation. It really is a function of some of that calcified thinking. And I think in my approach, in this interdisciplinary way of thinking, you have to meet people where they are, and you really have to, it's really on us to develop the arguments and the compelling evidence and the way to talk about this stuff in a way that they can appreciate, and to adjust what you're doing in a way that's not giving away the farm to them, or saying, acquiescing, but there is a way that it's not compromise. It's reframing the discussion around, let's say, performance, around, instead of getting trapped on traffic, shadows, big buildings, you change the conversation around values, around place, around the things that people they love and they get excited about. And so I'll give you an example. So much, if you talk to folks that are very worried about something that might be happening in their neighborhood, you often, maybe the first question I like to ask is, well, what do you like about your neighborhood? And what do you like anywhere you've been in the world? Where's your favorite place? And in some form, they'll probably say, oh, maybe it's the coffee shop, it's the bookstore. And then where their favorite place they've ever traveled, it's probably some European hill town that's very quaint, beautiful, and it's dense and it's mixed use, and they don't even know how to talk about it in that sense. When you really break down those things, you say, well, those are the kinds of things that we want to create too. And I think there's a way in, and then you start to overlay, well, there's the mechanics of how development happens in the United States. It's democratic, it's policy driven, and there's these rifts that sort of get us away from those fundamentals. And I think part of what really defines my approach and the company's approach is to really zero in on those proof points, those things that can be objective. and that can be easy way ins, easy entry points, so that people are disarmed by what we're proposing, as opposed to I hate this. And I think it's not trying to stuff something they don't want down their throat. It's actually offering up something that they will like and explaining it in the right way. And so it really depends. There's a lot of bad developers out there. There's a lot of really good ones as well. And I think I like to work with ones that tend to be more mission driven, that they see the upside in doing things a little differently. And it's not innovation for its own sake, but it's um, in service of providing the things that we think the greater public wants. Um, and I look up and down California, I look at up and down the East Coast. A lot of these places really haven't changed much, either since the 1990s or in many cases the 1960s. And those are the sort of last big booms of building that we've done. And I think that that's way too long to wait. And we're feeling the effects of that. So it's sort of a quest, a mission to try to find a way to shake the tree and create a company that specializes in that, and doing it very thoughtfully.
So I'm curious, what's your approach to the famous, that we're going to have so much more traffic with this new development? That seems to be the largest concern that most people have.
Yeah, some of it is, yeah, it's going to be a little worse, but there's also all these other things that are going to make it more tolerable. And I would say, it also depends very much on context. Part of a lot of the storytelling, part of the lot of the logic, just sound planning, is to try to co-locate jobs and housing and things that people like to do all in the same place, so that you're reducing those trips. And it's a harder argument to make when you're sort of just providing one or two of those three things in a place that really isn't designed for that infrastructure, in that scale. But then there's the other part of, there's quite a bit of advanced tools and modeling out there that can really show, in the event of an emergency, this is how people get out, or you shelter in place. And so I'm channeling a little bit of the work that I've been doing in the Palisades Tahoe resort, which it's at a dead end, right? And it's in a remote, a harder to get to part of the state. And there's real concern about wildfires and how people get out in that. And much like what you saw in the Franklin fire in Malibu down here, at Pepperdine University, there was this amazing image of students in the library with their phones recording 50-foot flames on the other side of campus. And there's a way that design can solve these issues, that you can effectively shelter in place. You don't need everyone rushing down the street to get out. In some cases, it's better to stay put. And I think showing that and then backing it up with the science, the best practices from around the world, there are ways to get at it. That's one unique example. I think certainly, San Francisco, I mean, going along the 101, you're in gridlock, or you're down here in the 405, one of the most congested stretches of road anywhere in the world. How do you overcome that when you need to densify? And I think it's a long game. I mean, there's inevitable pain, right? And until a viable alternative is available, it will be painful. And that's what should only further accelerate investment in alternatives. And I think people go with what's convenient, they go with what is reasonable. And if you don't provide those alternatives, it'll never change. And
Yeah.
it's a hard game, because we're talking about public finance and infrastructure and metro, and just look at what's going on with the BART right now. There's a crisis of confidence that these things can be run well, and to just swallow that, I think, is ignoring a reality that these things aren't working well right now. And this is why I go back to, if you remove the need to have to move, and it becomes something that is a function of your choosing, it's really different than much of what the transportation advocates' arguments are today, which is everyone should be able to get anywhere and it's all sort of equal. And, I really think it's a co-location collapsing of uses into more villages, into walkable neighborhoods, that's so much more important first and the infrastructure is then connecting places that people really want to be. Whereas down here in LA, you get a lot of this. It's really crazy, SB 79, the way that the politics have manifested here, where the city and the metro have both been vehemently against the densification, allowing housing near within a half mile of a transit stop, for very cynical reasons, because they're fearful of NIMBYism. They're fearful of a loss of local control. They're saying, well, every time I'm planning a network extension, people are going to associate big towers with it. And I think isn't that kind of the whole point, right? Is that you need to
Right.
create density to make ridership increase, to make that alternative work. And so I feel like there's just these funny tropes that happen that are playing out all over, and it's not unique to California. It's really in some forms in every part of the country, where we kind of need to get over ourselves a little bit and prove there are better places to be and nicer places to be that work this way. And I mean, San Francisco is a pretty nice place, I'd say. The bones of it are just extraordinary, and it's so beautiful from just the geography and the way that you experience it. And we're seeing it on the up and up. I think good leadership goes a long way too. So that's really encouraging.
Well, I think one example we were talking about earlier is the High Line in New York City. So I was fascinated by your information that, yeah, the High Line was a beautiful design project, but they didn't put in enough sustainability in terms of the economics of it. So that kind of shocked me. But, I think that's an interesting combination of things. Here was a beautiful design, but they didn't design it long term, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think the High Line, look, the High Line is held up as an extraordinary piece of reimagining, underutilized existing infrastructure, right? It was sitting there as this thing that was floating above the streets of New York between buildings, and this sort of relic of another time. And it was so easy and seductive. I mean, I say that sort of glib. I mean, it was a lot of effort among those that pulled it off. But it was this extraordinary transformation of this thing into a public park, elevated park. And the brilliance of it is that it wasn't just that, it was rezoning around it so that you spurred all of this new investment and created this basically new neighborhood there. That's like a triple win. Any city would be lucky to have that. The only nuance and the point I was trying to make is it is a place that people visit and they move through. And part of what made that experience and makes that experience so special is you're experiencing the city from above, and there's these performances and event programming and all that. And and keeping up with the plants and keeping it alive over time. They can't only rely on city funds for it. There's above and beyond, because it's such a special thing. There was no mechanism that they designed into it with all that value that was created on either side with new condos and new office buildings and Google and whatever, for some way of capturing that value and allowing it to sustain the operating budget of the park. And that there are other places, like I lived in New York for 10 years, so I was lucky enough to work on a lot of really big projects there, Essex Crossing and others. And there are these really, I think, even evolutions of the High Line in terms of a model, like Brooklyn Bridge Park. There's a mechanism for basically the effectively of the HOAs to maintain the park. And that's all I'm getting at, is that you can't just design something and call it a day. You can't just develop it. You need to be thinking about its ongoing sustainability, viability as a place. Who's going to want to live there? Who's going to be wanting to pay into it? What retailers want to be there? How is it programmed in a way that it becomes alive? Because without people, it's just hardware, right? And so thinking about it holistically like that, I think is super important. And innovation in that space, where you really do have to get creative about public-private partnerships and the kind of city building you might see in the UK, or more government-led, where the government is the arbiter of urban development, right? They own so much more land and they're procuring it, and as a condition of that, they're saying you got to invest in all these things. It's not done that way in the US, obviously, and so it's just there's a kind of innovation that is few and far between, but when you do see it, it's amazing. And certainly New York has plenty of examples of it.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are on affordable housing these days.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's a load, it's a very, I mean, affordability is just, at the really the forefront of everyone's thoughts that are thinking about the future of cities and particularly in the Western hemisphere and in places everywhere I'm working with a number of groups around this issue, as a sub-consultant, as part of a team that's working with LA County, trying to stand up what I believe might be the first of its kind pilot program, where a municipality or a government agency strategically buys really great underutilized sites near transit, near infrastructure, near jobs, and basically by buying it zeroes out the basis in the land so that affordable housing becomes the stack, like it basically pencils. The stack is easier because you're taking out the land cost. So that's a really interesting process. And it's almost what's so funny about the affordable housing space is it really seems like it's at a breaking point where the tax credit driven regime, stuff where it's funneled from the federal government through state and local agencies, that the model of that people are really acknowledging cannot scale without radically different politics at the federal level, and that the way that it happens is so much more inefficient than market driven housing. I'll give you an anecdote. The By my own research, looking at a lot of the data with some of the partners that are doing this day in and day out, um, a typical market rate project would have like maybe 15 to 20% soft costs as a percent of the total development costs.
Right.
A lot of the affordable housing stuff, it's 40 to 50%, and it's all and that is enough to make you pause. And it's not that they're taking on different kind of risk and they're dealing with a lot of more bureaucracy. It's a lot more challenging to close the cap, the stack there. And you're piecing together all these different programs, and it's sort of like cost plus, and you're doing fee development versus, I got this huge upside and I'm going to take the risk. So the motivations are different, but there isn't the same kind of incentive to go quickly. And it's not even really in their control. It's funding cycles and all these other things. And so you end up with increased soft cost bloat, and oftentimes the cost per unit is extraordinarily higher and the project's slower to deliver. And there's finite resources to actually do that, right? It's just, what is the net benefit to the public, right? We're putting a lot of money in this thing. What are we getting out of it? And so, in nowhere in the country is it really making up a significant amount of the actual housing production, right? And it's always meant to be a niche thing. It's supposed to go where the market can't solve the problem. That's a really good thing. That's where public dollars should go, where the market, the economics don't work. But I think what's happened is that the mentality that you're using public dollars, you've got to do prevailing wage, you've got to doing all these various things, sustainability requirements, everything's got to be, up here full on the avant-garde, has crept its way into just normal by right development, to the point where impact fees, transfer taxes, all these things have added this burden on top of an affordability requirement that nothing pencils, right? Nothing pencils. You froze the entire market and everyone's trying to clamor for these very finite dollars in the affordable subsidy space. And so we're at a really funny point. And where I'm optimistic is, I think all it takes is a little bit of innovation, either the creativity around how the deal is put together on the land, from a land perspective, certainly on a design and constructability point of view. If you're exploring, prefab modulars, there's so many people trying to do this and doing it well. Solar Impact down here in LA is a particularly unique example, among others. It's just a matter of time where these things, the friction that they're facing in terms of the building departments and permitting and all that they overcome it, and we'll be able to see significant cost reductions. But as soon as costs come down, then maybe land goes back up, right? So there's this equilibrium that needs to happen, and there's this alignment. And my whole point, I think, is what I'm trying to say is with this, is that good policy can't be too prescriptive, and it needs to be adaptable to market conditions. And what we have today are a lot of policies that are written where only like things, the times have to be perfect. They have to be, everything has to be going super well to be able to scale. And that almost never happens. Something's always out of whack. So I think
True.
it's just, that's the reality. And so like, you never see a city in the US ever exceed like maybe 1% of its total housing stock production. Big cities, I'm not talking about like Austin, it's an anomaly, but like LA or New York or San Francisco, they've never really seen these big booms. And so, to wave a magic wand by fiat, I would probably want to do away with a lot of those really well-intentioned policies in service of having a lot more housing. So I'm a supply side person by all measures, and I think there's ways to do it, and I think there's ways to responsibly do it. And the affordable housing covenants and all that; those are good things in certain contexts, in certain places. But when you stack things on top of those, it becomes really fragile. And the fragility is what I'm critiquing, not the intent.
Well, I think we could go on for probably another couple days talking about different issues here. So let's pause for a moment and maybe we'll come back and talk about this again in 3 to 6 months. But this was very, very interesting. So, Ryan, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan H. Lovett. You can also go to my website, lovett.city. And then I think my email is here blazed on my little image of my head there.
Yeah.
So get in touch. I'm open for business and looking to grow. And I'm very, as you can tell, very passionate about these challenges and think there's ways we can address them together.
No, I think you've got the formula for trying to get some of this done in a way that's going to make the world a little better place. So that's fantastic.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.